Okay, well, I just want to thank you, Sharon Haskell, a member of Knesset, for being here with me today. I appreciate you taking the time. Of course, this is coming on the heels of a major attack on Israel from Iran, and it's been a couple days now. So, what do you think Israel's response should be to this attack?
Wow. I mean, this was a full declaration of war on the state of Israel. This is coming after a few years that Iran had openly threatened, a sovereign country in the annihilation of the state of Israel. So I can say that we were expecting that to happen sometime sooner or later. This declaration of war, I believe, needs to be kept in Israel for a strategic time for whenever we see fit to respond to that attack. And if the Iranian took 2 weeks, I think we can make sure that the most important thing is that strategically it actually helps combating the evil forces in the Middle East. I think that Israel really has to have to concentrate, especially now, to make sure he doesn't forget our main goal, and it is to bring back our family members who are being held in the dungeons of Hamas, being abused physically, mentally, sexually, being starved. I mean, this is our top priority. We need to eliminate the threat of Hamas and bring them back home. And so Israel, for the last probably 2 months, almost 3 months now, we have been in a quiet ceasefire. It didn't bring a deal. Hamas rejected any deal that came to the table. And it is time now to act again, to enter Rafah, to make sure we reach the Philadelphia crossing, and we make sure that Hamas is a threat that's eliminated so that they can never do another 7th of October. We have to be focused on that. And then during this time, it's definitely important to make sure that the equation with Iran doesn't changes. And that's the most important thing. As long as Iran is a threat on our borders, while it's sending its troops, her battalion called Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the militias in Syria, and her battalion in Yemen, who are the Houthis, as long as it sends attacks on Israel from there, and as long as it sends its military and its weapon to attack Israel, we have the right to defend ourselves, especially straight on our borders. And so, if Iran thinks that this equation is going to change, they have it wrong. And I think that in the next couple of weeks, we'll definitely see how the image sort of is shaping and unfolding.
Okay, and I mean, this is all going on to the backdrop of war. It's almost like we were suspended in time from the war in Gaza, which, as you said, looks like some kind of ceasefire in some ways, and that was on the back burner. Nothing to do with the present situation. Iran wasn't even defending the Palestinians. Actually, they were coming to show that they were retaliating for their generals who were killed. So from your position, you're in the opposition now. How has the government's response been to all of this, starting with Iran and then also to the war in Gaza? I mean, what do you think needs to be done? What are they doing right, and what are they doing wrong?
Wow. Look, if there was any criticism, is that Israel didn't respond as fiercely and as quickly as it should. I mean, I'm part of a party which is headed by Gideon Sa'ar, the New Hope Party, the right camp, and the reason why we left is because we feel that the military operation right now in Gaza will not lead us to a victory over Hamas or to bring back our family members and the hostages that are being held in Gaza. So if we have any criticism, it is that.
Okay, what do you want to see happen in Gaza? What does the completion of this war look like? I understand the elimination of Hamas, but how can you ever prove that? And then also just what will be with the Palestinians? Many of them are homeless right now. And, you know, apparently there's on the verge of famine. So what is going to be, everybody talks about the day after. So what does that look like to you?
Okay. So I'll just say there is no famine in Gaza. There are hundreds of trucks who are entering every single day. If anything, it's Hamas and UNRWA who are not capable and are not distributing that humanitarian aid. Instead of that, Hamas is actually selling the humanitarian goods in the market so they can actually profit from that. How do we see, the operation? I can tell you how I see that. And the way that I see it is, first of all, yes, definitely going into Rafah and eliminating Hamas military bases over there. And it's mainly to make sure that the Philadelphia crossing is in Israeli hands, because that's the major strip of control, of security control that we need to have to make sure that Hamas doesn't have more capabilities of what he has now. This is the main route of money that's channeling into Hamas's hands, and that's the main route of smuggling weapons and missiles into Gaza. So this is on the military side of it. And we need to remember that only with this military pressure we'll be able to release our family members, and this is as an equal goal that we want to achieve and that we need to achieve. The other completion of the operation in Gaza is in regards of civilian issue. And right now, Hamas has full control over the civilian issues or day-to-day life routine of the Palestinians. And it is because Hamas has literally taken over UNRWA. Okay, while Hamas is controlling UNRWA, it means that the civilian aspect of Gazan citizens is in the hands of Hamas. And maybe I'll try and make it more clear. UNRWA is not a humanitarian organization. This is a United Nations organization that is run and managed and operated by Palestinians. It is a Palestinian organization in the majority, but what it does, it supplies facilities and infrastructures and services that any normal government will supply to its citizens. Meaning that they're supplying the education system, they're supplying the medical system, the welfare, housing, all the way to sewage and street cleaners. And when they do that, this organization has actually taken the role of a government, which really means, in fact, that it's the international community that's in charge of the civilian lives of Gazan citizens, whether they want it or not. This is how it's been for 75 years. You know, the Palestinian leadership doesn't want and cannot take control of those services that any normal government would have supplied to their citizens. And so we need to admit the reality, and the international community needs not just to supply it and pay for it, but also to be responsible for it. It cannot go into the hands of terrorists, the one who abuse it to build military bases under United Nations facilities who have immunity, to hire military wing terrorists of Hamas who have literally committed genocide and butchered babies and women and elderlies. And so what I see is sort of some kind of a shift of power within the UNRWA organization as well, to make sure that Hamas doesn't have control over it, so it doesn't have also control over the civilian lives of the Gazan citizens.
Okay. All right. Now, I know you don't have a lot of time. I want to ask you about another issue so it's very interesting because you are in a party that's very right-wing, on security issues, but you yourself have also very liberal views, like in the social aspect, and also you have spoken up for Iranian women and the revolution that had been going on. You actually cut your hair in solidarity with the Iranian women at an event. Was it 2 years ago or a year ago? Anyway,
almost about a year and a half ago, I think.
year and a half ago, right?
Yeah.
I was there, and I remember thinking, she's about to cut her hair. Get my camera out. So I know that you're very strong on minority rights, also in Israel. And lately there was an interview Tucker Carlson did on his new channel on Twitter or X. He interviewed a Palestinian pastor, and his premise was that the government of Israel is treating Christians badly. So why should America support and arm a government that is treating Christians badly? Now, I know that you are a friend of the Christians in general. You've been at Christian events and things like that. But there have been incidents here. Now, of course, he spoke to a Palestinian pastor, and I know I don't know what Israel can do to control what happens with Palestinian Christians, but in Israel, there are sometimes there has been violence and vandalism and spitting at Christians that has gone on here. But what is the Israel like? What can the Israeli government do for the Christian minority here to keep it secure, to ensure that they're not leaving? And anyway, I mean, what do you want to say about this interview? I don't know if you got to hear it or hear anything about it.
Yeah, well, it's a perfect example how Tucker can take a situation and completely distort it from the truth. And it's a perfect situation on how social media can actually do that, but completely ignoring many facts and many numbers. And he goes for the emotion instead of that. Now, try and think about it. The person that he actually interviewed, do you think he has the same rights as me and you, democratic rights? He didn't elected his government and his leadership, okay? This is literally a dictatorship, okay? You don't have freedom of speech, and many times your freedom of religion is being restricted as well, okay? If you now are bad-mouthing your leadership in a dictatorship, what would happen to you? If they demand you to sort of, even lie or say anything that they want on video, what would you do? Can they threaten your children? Can they threaten your community? Can they discharge you from your church? Yes, they can. So I would probably prefer to speak to Christians who might have those liberty and are free to speak on their own. And look, the Christian community, it's terrible what had happened to them. It is. I mean, look, the Oslo Accord that came in the 90s gave, has made major distortions here in Israel. I mean, think about it. Before the Oslo Accord, in the beginning of the 90s, before the 90s, if you look on the Christian population in Bethlehem and in Ramallah, it was more than 90%. 90% of Christians. Do you know that today they're less than 10%, almost less than 5% in those two major cities? How did that happen? Were they under the control of Israel? No, prior, maybe. But right now, under the Palestinian Authority, they are being, being shrunk. Many of their rights are being deprived as well. Okay? So let's talk about the facts and look on the numbers. Let's look on the numbers of Christians here in Israel, okay? Not under the Palestinian Authority. The Christian communities here are thriving. I mean, they have completely and full equal rights to any other Israeli citizen. Okay, many of their systems and everything is being funded, same as any Israeli citizen. Okay, I actually worked with a few priests and pastors here in Israel to make sure that we advance the Christian education system. We work with these minorities together. We cherish them. They're important for the fabric of Israel. More so, we know that, the dispute, the Israeli-Palestinian dispute. I mean, look on the terrorist attacks that had happened in Israel, devastating ones. Suicide bombers in buses, restaurants. Look on what's happening now. How come there wasn't a single Christian Palestinian who went on a suicide bombing attack? Only the Muslims. We have no war with the Christians. On the contrary, they find refuge here in Israel, where they are the most persecuted minority in the Middle East. Here, they are protected. They have freedom of religion and they are free to thrive. And it's important for us to make sure that their rights are being guarded as any other citizen here in Israel.
Okay.
You know, I'll just add one more thing, and it's important that Tucker really understand that. Anywhere in the world, especially the Middle East, particularly in the Middle East, where Jews were persecuted and eliminated, like my family had to flee from Morocco, hundreds of thousands from Iraq and Iran and Syria and Lebanon, strong and communities that were there for generations and generations had to flee because of persecution. Jews were persecuted there. And after the Jew left, who did these authority turn to? The Christians. Now, the most persecuted minority in the Middle East are Christians. This is a struggle that we fight together against radical Islam.
Although the Christians here, the Christians who are citizens and or residents of Israel, they do feel like second-class citizens here, and they feel like there's not enough law enforcement on their side when it comes to attacks on their churches. There were attacks on a church in Haifa recently. There were several attacks. It was the beginning of last year in Jerusalem that kind of lasted for like the first 6 or 7 months of the year, spitting and vandalism and fighting, like attacks, physical attacks, and that they say there's not enough enforcement. Yes, the police may come, they may respond, but then the people don't get prosecuted, and they feel that this is what makes them second-class citizens in the state of Israel.
I have to say that's not truth. I mean, look on the monastery that was vandalized. They were persecuted. They were in court and everything. I mean, there isn't any kind of discrimination in the sense of how the police treat it. Okay, so let's put the facts in. They are being persecuted. They are being in courts. They do receive a punishment for that, and rightfully. Okay, we have to maintain and keep sacred places and the freedom of religion here in Israel. It's massively important for us. Now, is this utopia? No. Yes, Israel has racism. There's racism in America, there's racism in England, there's racism in France. No one's perfect, but we are committed and are striving to fight it as much as we can. I mean, I'm a Jewish parliament member who go to churches, who meet the Christian community to know what I can do to better their life, to fight it together. I mean, if anything, Israel is this example on how, a very complicated society, a very fragile fabric that is intertwined, the Jews and the Christian and the Bedouin and the Druze and the Cherkess and the Muslims and so many more communities are actually capable of living side by side together. Is it perfect? No place on earth is perfect, but we're committed to fight and to make sure that we constantly make it better.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you Do you have anything you want to add? You had said at the beginning before we started recording, you said that you had a lot of hope. Do you want to share what that means?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Christian communities all around the world in the support, the love, and the prayer that they're sending to our nation and to our people. You have no idea how much strength it actually gives us. And yes, it gives us hope as well. I mean, on the weekend with the Iranian attack, I think that one thing positive that we got from it was the incredible cooperation between Israel, America, Britain, Saudi, Jordan, Egypt, and more powers united against the evil forces of Iran, the most vile and vicious regime who's the biggest instigator of terror and instability in our region. And that cooperation really gives me hope. It gives me hope that we can build partnership and we can, have neighbors that we can rely on and live together. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was very interesting. Somebody said Jordan should get the MVP award for taking part in this, although they kept it neutral and said they're always going to protect their airspace against anybody that attacks. But yeah, it was interesting. But now, why are these countries then not getting involved in? Anyway, never mind. I'm not going to ask that question. I'm going to end this, and I'm going to say thank you. Thank you very much for your time and for your responses.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure to chat with you. And let's hope that we all have all around the world a quiet and peaceful week.
Yes. Yes. And a good holiday coming up also for you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks.